The first show that I played was the Ohio State Fair with about 20,000 people. And I was extremely frightened. Ricky Nelson earned millions as America's sweetheart, but he couldn't even buy movie tickets. His father controlled every penny. When Ricky begged for pocket money, he was told to collect soda bottles for change. Behind the perfect family image was a darker truth. Recently discovered contracts reveal how his own parents trapped him in a deal that stole his childhood and his fortune. But that's not the worst part. New evidence shows what really happened in those final years before the plane crash. The truth will destroy everything you believed about America's most famous family. He was born into a script someone else had written. On May 8, 1940, Eric Hilliard Nelson came into the world in Teaneck, New Jersey. But by the time he could crawl, his name had already been rehearsed through microphones and stitched into studio contracts. His father, A.Z. Nelson, had already swung through the big band era with a baton in one hand and a vision in the other. His mother, Harriet Hilliard, had sung on vaudeville stages and smiled through film reels long before Ricky learned to stand. Their fame wasn't the kind that came and went. It was built into living rooms across America every week. And by October 1944, the adventures of A.Z. and Harriet had turned their family into the country's first sitcom royalty. The house Ricky grew up in didn't echo with bedtime stories or scraped knees. It pulsed with rehearsals, lighting checks, and scripts marked in pencil. Even before preschool, Harriet was teaching him how to control his breathing between verses. She never sent him to school at all. Not until she was satisfied he could sing a note without cracking. Ricky didn't ask to become a performer. He was raised like a product being polished for a showroom window, shaped by his mother's schedule and his father's ambition. By the time he was 4, his name was already printed in call sheets. At 8, he stepped into the sound booth to replace the child actor playing him on the family's radio show. No one asked if he was ready. That wasn't part of the plan. He was a sickly boy, thin, quiet, with a chest that we threw the night and skin that didn't seem made for cameras. Asthma kept him in bed more than recess ever would have. He wasn't bold or loud. He was slow to speak, observant, watching the world from behind a wall of studio lights and parental scripts. But in 1949, when Ricky and David finally played themselves on the airwaves, audiences didn't see the sickly kid. They heard jokes, they heard timing, they heard a little boy turning into a natural, even if behind the scenes, Ricky was just doing what he was told. Within months, the show was pulling in 20 million listeners every week. Ricky was 9 and making $200 per episode. That would be around $4,500 today, but none of it reached his hands. A.Z. kept the money. All of it. Ricky was given an allowance so small it barely covered snacks. While other kids traded baseball cards, Ricky's father was trading his son's fame for furniture and property, vacations, and investments. By the time Ricky was 16, he had $500,000 in his name, over $5.7 million today. But he couldn't touch any of it. At 18, he was paying 93% of his income to taxes. Once, just to take a girl to the movies, he had to dig through soda bottles for change. In 1952, the family moved to Hollywood, and the radio show became a television show. The living room on screen wasn't just a set, it mirrored the real one. But for Ricky, the shift to TV meant even more visibility. He was no longer a voice in the ether. He was a face, a body, a public figure, and he didn't enjoy it. He couldn't make friends, couldn't walk alone, couldn't be late to set without his father pulling him aside. There were no sleepovers, no football games, no dances without permission. A.Z. would tell him, "The family is your world." And that was that. Ricky began hiding. Not physically. He couldn't, but internally. The smiling, perfect boy on TV was rarely the same boy backstage. He battled anxiety, often excusing himself from shoots to catch his breath. He'd panic before commercials. He'd get sick before scenes. Wetties ads, magazine covers, teenage heartthrob headlines. All of them felt like masks he couldn't take off. Friends would later say he had no idea how to be himself unless someone told him who that was. By 1955, the show had won Emmys, and Ricky's face was pinned on bedroom walls across the country. The Adventures of A.Z. and Harriet would run for 14 seasons, a record at the time with 435 episodes. It followed Ricky from age 8 to his 20s. It staged his first dates, first crushes, and musical awakenings. Everything felt real because it was presented as real. But off camera, it was different. Ozzy didn't just direct the show. He directed Ricky's life. From school to dating to money. Everything was filtered through a script written by someone else. And Ricky was expected to hit his marks. When his asthma flared, producers hid vaporizers just out of frame. When he grew tired after 12-hour shoots, Harriet reminded him the family's image came first. Red Skeleton's producer once called him an odd little kid. But behind the oddness was exhaustion. Harriet admitted later that Ricky's cheerful demeanor was often forced. His illnesses weren't pauses. They were inconveniences to be worked around. He smiled for the audience and collapsed when the camera stopped. And still, the money flowed. In 1957 and 1958, Ricky was earning $5,000 per week. In today's money, that's over $50,000 a week. Yet none of it gave him freedom. AZ used the income to pay for their Hollywood Hills estate, the Cadillacs, the country club memberships. Ricky was given a $50 allowance. He once admitted that the only way he could buy something personal was to ask permission or sneak change. Even in high school, Ricky acted out, not with drugs or rebellion, but with pranks and absences. He failed English just to see what would happen. He skipped class to blast records and sneak off to see live music. He didn't want trouble. He wanted freedom. In music, he found it. It was the one place where his parents didn't fully control him. When he began recording his own songs, it was partly out of curiosity and partly out of desperation. He wanted a voice that wasn't filtered through a character. When Ricky Nelson was just 10, asthma hit him hard. Not just the kind that passed in a few days. This one lingered, forcing him to stay in bed for weeks while other kids were outside running, yelling, living. But Ricky wasn't resting. He was memorizing scripts. AZ Nelson, his father, called it preparation for greatness. Ricky was missing school, missing birthday parties, missing the world. But on paper, he was getting ahead. The show, The Adventures of AZ and Harriet, kept growing, and Ricky's role kept growing with it. Fame and sickness blurred. Illness didn't stop his work. In fact, it became part of it. The pressure didn't let up, and over time, he stopped seeing rest as something for recovery. It became part of the job. What started as asthma turned into something bigger. It shaped how he saw childhood. It told him he wasn't a normal kid. He was an investment. When he was 12, Ricky wanted a bicycle. Nothing fancy, just something to feel the wind on his face like the other boys. AZ and Harriet said no. Not because of money, not because it was unsafe, because it didn't match his image. They didn't want fans or reporters snapping photos of Ricky looking too ordinary. So, while his classmates pedaled around town, Ricky walked, sometimes to school, sometimes to the set. That bike, or the lack of it, left a bigger mark than they expected. It wasn't about wheels. It was about freedom. And every step he took reminded him of the things he couldn't have. The feeling settled deep. His life wasn't his. His smile, his style, his schedule, it all belonged to someone else. At 14, the teasing started. Kids at school called him TV boy. At first, it was just joking, but Ricky felt it cut through. He wasn't one of them. He lived in two worlds. One had studio lights and scripted laughter. The other had locker rooms and cafeteria jokes, and he didn't belong in either. Harriet tried to help. She arranged bonding moments on set, tried to turn the fake family into something real. But the warmth was staged, and Ricky knew it. The more they tried, the more it reminded him what he didn't have. The teasing didn't stop, and Ricky withdrew. He found more comfort pretending on camera than trying to connect off it. He wasn't growing up, he was being built. By 16, Ricky Nelson had made over $500,000, adjusted to 2024. That was about $362 million. But he didn't feel rich. His parents gave him just $50 a week. The rest was locked away. They said it was to protect him from being spoiled. But Ricky didn't feel protected. He felt powerless. One night, when he wanted to take a girl to the movies, he didn't even have the cash. So he gathered empty soda bottles, turned them in for coins, and bought the tickets that way. He later admitted it made him feel worthless. He was a star on screen, but in real life, he was just a kid counting nickels. The gap between who he was and who people thought he was kept widening. Even the dances were controlled. Ricky wasn't allowed to go to school parties or casual hangouts. AZ wanted everything chaperoned, clean, safe, scripted. So Ricky stood in rooms full of strangers his parents approved of, watched closely, told what to say, what not to say. There was no risk, but there was also no freedom. He couldn't stumble through awkward first dates, couldn't whisper dumb jokes to friends, couldn't just be a teenager. He once said he felt like a star but not a person. Those years didn't give him memories, they gave him marketing. Then, in early 1957, everything shifted. Ricky saw Elvis Presley on The Ed Sullivan Show and it lit something in him. He wasn't thinking about the family brand. He just wanted to sing. He begged AZ to help. And on March 26, 1957, in a Hollywood studio, Ricky recorded I'm Walking and A Teenager's Romance. Both songs were released on April 24. But before they even hit stores, Ricky performed them live on his family's show. Viewers watched the episode and raced to stores. The songs exploded. A Teenager's Romance hit number 2. I'm Walking reached number 17. Suddenly, Ricky wasn't just the quiet boy on TV. He was a teen idol. Verve Records didn't last. They clashed with Aussie over royalties and control. So by summer 1957, Ricky signed with Imperial Records. That contract changed everything. For a teenager to get creative control was almost unheard of. But Ricky got to pick his songs, approved the album covers, choose the musicians. The first single, Bop Baby, came out October 7th. It sold 750,000 copies before it even hit stores. Eventually, it passed 1 million. It climbed to number 3 on the Billboard chart and number 5 on the R&B chart. It was clean, polished, different from the wild energy of Jerry Lee Lewis or Little Richard. Ricky didn't scream, he didn't shake, but he sold. Imperial paired the single with Have I Told You Lately That I Love You, betting on both rock and sweetness. The gamble worked. Billboard ranked Bop Baby number 42 for the year. His debut album, simply titled Ricky, followed shortly after. It mixed covers like Blueberry Hill and Bopping the Blues with his own hits. The album climbed to number 1. It stayed in the top 10 for months. Ricky was no longer just a TV son. He was the face of teenage rock. The blend of television and music turned out to be genius. AZ didn't stop there. He wove the songs into the show itself. One episode staged a fake studio recording of Startup just before the actual release. That one move sent a man soaring. When the song officially dropped on December 30, 1957, it hit number 2 on the Billboard chart. It also charted on the R&B and country lists. That had never really been done before. A single crossing that many lines. Ricky's reach wasn't just wide, it was deep. In the summer of 1958, something new was about to change the face of American music forever. Billboard introduced a fresh chart called the Hot 100, and within just a few weeks, one song climbed faster than anyone expected. Poor Little Fool by Ricky Nelson shot up from number 18 to number 1 by August 4th. It stayed there for 2 full weeks, not just leading the Hot 100, but also topping the best-selling pop singles chart. No one had ever done that before. Nelson wasn't just on the radio, he was on television. He was in teen bedrooms across the country. By the end of the year, over 2 million records had been sold. Theater managers airing his family's TV show found themselves forced to call in police just to control the crowd. Letters poured in by the thousands to his studio. Some girls wrote every single day. He wasn't just a pop star, he was the first real teen idol America had ever seen. A few weeks later, on August 29, 1958, Ricky released something slower. Lonesome Town sounded soft, sad, and nothing like the rock and roll frenzy most people expected from a teen heartthrob, but it landed like thunder. The song climbed to number 7 on the Hot 100 and found itself sitting on the R&B charts, too. That didn't happen often for white artists in those years. It had backing vocals by the Jordanaires, the same group that sang with Elvis. People compared it to Love Me Tender, but this one hit differently. Teenagers, especially the heartbroken ones, said it helped them feel seen. Letters again flooded in. The song didn't just live on records and radio. It appeared again and again on The Adventures of AZ and Harriet, where Ricky played himself. Years later, it found a second life in Pulp Fiction, pulling a new generation into its echo of loneliness. Then came 1959, a year so packed with hits it barely left space to breathe. Ricky Nelson released 6 singles that year. Every single one entered the top 40. Believe What You Say peaked at number 4. Never Be Anyone Else But You reached number 6. Its late hit number 9. Altogether, his music stayed on the charts for 55 weeks that year. Elvis was away in the army. Ricky took the spotlight. Concerts earned him $5,000 per night. His label didn't want the fire to cool. Producers rushed out new records almost monthly. Fan clubs exploded. Over 9,000 official chapters formed worldwide. All for a boy not yet 20. His sound bounced between up-tempo rock and soft ballads. It wasn't just kids buying. Parents bought, too. He was clean. He was safe. He was everywhere. Then something wild happened. In June 1959, Nelson played a concert in New York. Over 10,000 girls showed up. Some had waited for hours. When he ended his set, the crowd surged forward, screaming, pushing, running. Police rushed in. They had to physically pull him from the stage and into a car. Girls banged on the windows, climbed the sides, chased it down the street. Newspapers the next day called it a riot. Other cities started to worry. Rock shows began hiring extra security. Nelson's label quietly reduced his public appearances. For the first time, teen hysteria became a real public threat. It wouldn't be the last time pop music would cause mayhem. That same year, his album Ricky Sings Again reached number 6. It sold over 1 million copies before the year ended. This song's Sweeter Than You hit number 9. What set the album apart was the image that came with it. Ricky never shouted. He didn't smash guitars. He wore pressed shirts, smiled politely, performed on national TV in front of his parents. That clean image worked. Parents trusted him. Girls adored him. Record labels started copying it. They tried to build the next safe teen idol, but none had that same quiet confidence Ricky carried, like it was part of his skin. By 1961, he released Traveling Man, a song that became something else entirely. It hit number 1 on May 29th and stayed there for 5 straight weeks. Over 6 million copies sold almost instantly. The song had started as a demo pulled from the trash. Its B-side, Hello Mary Lou, hit number 9 in the US and climbed to number 2 in the UK. The album it came from, Rick is 21, went gold. The public couldn't get enough. Sports teams even played Traveling Man at games. It wasn't just a hit, it was a wave, a global one. Both sides of the record charted at the same time in multiple countries. It was the kind of double feat few artists ever achieved. The year before he had toured Europe, 20 cities, 50 shows, 100,000 fans. They packed venues across Germany, the UK, France, Some nights he performed twice. Fans pushed past security. Nelson, still a teenager, began to wear out. He looked pale, tired. The pace was brutal. His father, AZ, booked the tour to keep momentum going. The goal was clear: milk the fame before it faded. But the price was already showing on Ricky's face. In 1962, it got worse. He released 10 singles in a single year. That number is staggering even for modern stars with digital studios. He collapsed during a promotional tour in Hawaii on stage in front of fans. Doctors warned him to slow down, but the shows kept coming. AZ refused to cancel. Fans started to notice. He seemed distant. His voice wasn't the same. The energy dipped. Something had shifted. And though the spotlight still followed him, the glow began to dim. In 1963, Decca Records signed Ricky to a massive 20-year contract worth $1 million. Everyone thought it was a brilliant move. But then the Beatles arrived. The sound changed, the style changed, the audience changed. Suddenly, Ricky Nelson's polished image felt old. His single, For You, still reached number 6 in 1964, but the magic didn't stick. Decca tried to steer him into folk rock, then country rock. Nothing recaptured the fire. The contract that once looked like gold started to feel like chains. Nelson wanted to grow, but the world had moved on. He didn't stop. In 1961, String Along reached number 23. In 1964, his Rick Nelson in Concert live album showed off a new sound. His band evolved. He brought in serious musicians. One of them, James Burton, became a legend. The band leaned into harmonies, country rock textures. It wasn't teen pop anymore. It was something else. That something shaped the future. Randy Meisner, who later helped form the Eagles, played in Ricky's Stone Canyon Band in the early 1970s. Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt drew influence from the same sonic roots. It was called the California Sound, and Ricky helped build it. At just 12 years old, Ricky Nelson stepped into the world of film with Here Come the Nelsons in 1952. It wasn't just a movie, it was a family affair, shot at General Service Studios. The film was a natural extension of the adventures of AZ and Harriet, and it gave America a charming glimpse into the real-life Nelson household. With a modest budget and a simple plot about suburban life, the film tapped into post-war American values and quickly became a hit with families. Ricky didn't need a dramatic role to win hearts. Just being himself, the youngest Nelson, was enough to make him a name everyone remembered. By 1958, he took a sharp turn. On General Electric Theater, Ricky played a troubled teen in an episode called The Wish Book.